Welcome to the Legends of Land show. Today we have the land lawyer himself here to talk about land with us. Welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into land and what the land lawyer does?
Yeah. Thanks for having me today. It's awesome to be here. So, I got into land really because my brother got into the business. He started in 2020, and we've both been investment minded for as long as I can remember. We were pretty fortunate. Our parents taught us about investing in stocks, instilled in us, hey, if you put this money aside over here, it will grow for you and it'll do good things. I'd been reading the Wall Street Journal, making stock picks. And I made some pretty good ones, like buying Amazon in 2013, stuff like that. But my brother came to me one day and he was like, "Hey, I heard about this thing on a podcast where you buy land sight unseen. You can do it at any state, and you can sell it. You can potentially make 100% return." And I'm over here thinking like, if you're making 12% a year, that's great. So he's telling me this. I'm like, man, that just sounds crazy. That sounds super risky. You're not even going to go see it. Like, how do you know this land even is what you say it is? But I'd say he's probably the more, you know, he was willing to take that risk and just go. So he went out there and did it, and I saw what he did, and I was like, "Holy crap! Like this is a real thing." I told him like, "Hey, will you help me get into it?" And he's like, "Sure, let's prepare some mail together." So we started preparing mail together and really targeting smaller properties out on the West Coast. We've done a ton of deals in Arizona, Oregon, other states out there, but that's how it got started in terms of just land flipping. We both always had an interest in land. We have a farm probably an hour and a half or so from where we live. We're familiar with land ownership, what it means to be a landowner, what it means to take care of land, and we know firsthand what you can do on land and all the just amazing family memories that you can create. So I think that in addition to being a great financial opportunity, we both just love the class. We just love land.
There's definitely some magic within land. That's something I say to people. They're like, ask why I got into land. It's because I love it. Something about land I just love. I was in real estate, I flipped houses, but it was really just all about the land, owning a piece of earth that you can do whatever you want with. It's feels like the most tangible asset possible. It just is always going to be there. And I love that. I love that piece of it.
Totally, man. And honestly, you don't have to have a ton of land for you to create just amazing family memories. On my grandparents on my mom's side, grandfather had 40 acres. He had a small field where he'd farm corn or peanuts, had a big garden, had a super awesome setup in the back for deer hunting. He had a small pond, and it was just an incredible setup on 40 acres. And it's just a
Mhm.
place that you can create a massive, like you can raise kids on 40 acres and give them an incredible childhood there. Or you can, if deer hunting is your thing, maybe you can have that as an awesome source of recreation. And unlike a boat or a fast car, if you want to get out of your recreational investment in land, you're probably going to do pretty good. And boat or a car, you're going to lose, at least 20% when you drive it off the lot.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, I it's funny because people come to my house from out of town and I literally take them and show them my compost garden, my compost pile in my garden. It's like the thing I'm most proud of. Like the soil that I've been building over the past 5 years is like my prized possession. So yeah, I feel you on the just the feeling around land. I think that a lot of people that I talk to in the business have that same type of draw. There's something interesting there.
I
So
think to like really be great in land, like you have to, this backing up, like to be great in whatever you're doing, I think you have to really love it and love it beyond the financial success that it might bring you. So people that know, love, and appreciate the outdoors, I think are perfectly suited to come into this, especially for the more rural stuff, like a lot of what we do.
mhm. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Talk about maybe one of the deals that you did early on in your land journey where you had a close call or some sort of lesson you learned.
We had this one, it was in South Georgia. had some wetlands on the property, but it also had probably about half of it was upland. We had a broker go check it out. So, man, this land is beautiful. Yeah, everything should be good. This part looks really dry. So we ended up not getting a perk test and moved forward with the closing. Closing was about $18,000. Listed it, ton of interest because in this area there was like nothing on the market. We listed it at $40,000, got a full price cash offer almost immediately. We go into due diligence. They're like, okay, we need to get a perk test. We're like, all right, yeah, it should be fine. We've had somebody go up, check it out. And granted, the broker that looked at it, of course, he wasn't a with the health department or a soil scientist. Health department guy goes out there and he's like, yeah, this isn't gonna perk. And I'm like, what do you mean? Is it not even gonna be available for an alternative septic system or anything? He's I can't make that call. You need to hire a soil scientist and get out here and he'll be able to tell you better than I can. And this soil scientist goes out, he does his thing, and his report, he told us something I've never seen before or since. It was straight up, you cannot put any type of septic system here whatsoever. Not an alternative, not anything. I was like, what the heck's going on? There was an occlusive layer of clay there to where you just cannot put even like a cap and fill or an above ground whatever. He's in my professional opinion, you can't put anything here. So we got super lucky on that deal because the neighbor happened to also really want that property. It's probably 8 acres. And it was great for him because he probably had about 10, gave him 18 acres there and expanded his home site. Great for him. We got out of that thing at 25. So after our closing costs and everything, we made a few $1,000s, but that was a close call. And if that, to be frank, if we didn't get lucky with that neighbor being there, we would have lost money on that deal for sure. Because 8 acres, you can put one, you probably could have put a deer stand there, but that's a pretty low rent hunting tract.
Yeah, that is a close call. And that could have changed the whole trajectory of how far you continue to land, or if you decided maybe this isn't such the great idea. So that's what's wild. What do you think like a non-negotiable for people who want to be successful in land is, looking at the bigger picture?
Look, there are certain levers that we pull in this business, and you just got to pull the levers. That's it. You got to create a system. You got to pull the levers. So when you back up, you say like, really, what are we in land? Everybody says we're in land. Like, yes, we focus on land, but what are we really? We're advertising agencies. So what does that mean? You have to go, you have to send the mail, you have to make the phone calls, you have to do whatever you can do to find those off-market deals because that's where the money is. So you have to put in the time, money, and effort into your outbound marketing. Number one, that is a non-negotiable. If you're not doing that, nothing's just going to come in and land in your lap. And then another non-negotiable is you have to provide great service. In a way, we're in the service business. We make things easy for people who want to sell their land. So you have to provide great service. You have to pick up the phone when they call, and you have to be competent enough in the closing process to make sure that they are comfortable. That's the big thing is that they are comfortable because most of the time they don't know us from Adam. We're a voice on the phone telling them that money is going to appear for them through this closing attorney or title agency. You got to have great communication and service with them. And then finally, you have to continually, you have to make sure your capital is in order before you do this. Cause there's nothing worse than promising somebody that you're able to buy this property and then you get to the closing table and you're not able to.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the systematizing different parts of the business, and that it's land is almost like a widget, and you have to build all the processes around that. Let's talk about each part of your process. What do you do on the front end to acquire property?
So almost all of our deals come off of direct mail. We're starting to leverage brokers to find value add deals, but I'd still say historically and still to date, almost everything comes off of our direct mail. We are not employed. We've never employed text messaging. We've never employed ringless voicemail. We are really just laser focused on direct mail. Like I said, we're an advertising agency, and I've been reading these books on advertising, the founders of advertising recently, and something that Claude Hopkins, which is one of the like pioneers of American advertising, says like we as business people, we want to change something because we feel it's boring. We're just used to doing it, but that's really not the right thing. Like when you find something that works, you triple down on it. Run that play till it doesn't work anymore. You're a football coach. You're the offensive coordinator for a football team. You have a play that works. Run it up the middle. I'm going to call that play all day.
Yeah. Alex Hormozy talks about that also. He says to exhaust each of your channels before you go somewhere else, you're wasting resources. And so you just hammer on one thing until it becomes ineffective or until you reach its cap. And then you open a second marketing channel. And I think that's a smart way to look at it. Talk a little bit about what numbers you do for mailers. Like how many mailers do you send out? How do you determine where you're going to mail? What type of return on your spend do you get?
So we're probably sending somewhere between 8 and 10,000 mailers a month. Just working back into that number, that's probably $6,000 to $7,000 in ad spend a month. And to be honest, I don't have a great handle on what our exact return on ad spend is, but I know it's a lot. I know it's a really good number. That's one item that we're in the process of implementing our business is tracking all of our key metrics. My brother and I, we to date we know that it's working, but we also know that we need to know exactly how well it's working so that we can continue to scale and improve our business.
And what's it look once the leads come in? So you send out a mailer. Are you sending out 7 to 10,000 mailers all at once? Are you dripping those out? And then when the leads start coming back in, what's your process look like following up with them and closing those deals?
Yeah, so those are dripped out over the month, and then basically, we have our phone lines. They'll call in. Still, we've done a ton of deals, and we are still the guys answering the phone. We're in the process of getting acquisitions manager in place, and we're being really careful with that hiring. Basically, the inbound call comes in. We're talking with them, negotiating with them. We reach a price, we send them a DocuSign, or if they want, we will send them a hard copy purchase agreement, and then they'll get it back to us, and we'll get it to our closing attorney and or title company, depending on what state we're in, and get the process rolling. And then we always make sure that we copy them on all of our communication with the title company and keep them updated in the process as it goes along. Because if you're selling your land and let's say you have a 30-day closing period and you don't hear something for 3 weeks, you're going to start to think about it.
Mm.
We try to handle that on the front end and just make the process easy for them.
Yeah. I think there's a psychological aspect to that. It's the same thing as running a business or an agency or something like that. But people make a buying decision and then their that period directly after the buying decision or selling their property decision is fragile, mentally fragile. And there needs to be some sort of reinforcement like, did I make the right decision? And so you stepping in and being like, hey, these things are going smooth. This is where we're at in the process. Like you're going to get your money. Just reaffirming that decision is a key part, I think, the psychology of the sale. And that's what you're referring to. What do you then talk about reselling the property and what that looks like? What's your strategy on dispositions?
So we leverage brokers for nearly 100% of our dispositions. And in the areas where we work a lot, we have brokers that they really operate as our partners and an extension of our business. Because I guess is one thing I left out from earlier. We put all those properties in front of the same brokers that we are working with time and time again. And generally, they cover fairly large geographic area. So we get their opinion on what they would list the property for. And then during the due diligence period, they actually go step foot on it. So they have the marketing ready to go as soon as we close on the property. They've typically already gone out there and taken pictures and all that stuff. So the day that we close, we're getting that thing listed, and we just leverage them. Because the way I look at it, we're an acquisitions company. Like, where do we make money? It's acquisition. I hear about guys like having sales teams, and that's great and all, but at least for me, I look at it, stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. It's like, how can we best leverage our time? Let's go out and acquire more land. That's where we make money in the business, acquisitions. So we're laser focused on that. And if you're wading through all the tire kickers or hiring somebody and then managing them while they wade through tire kickers, I just think that time, those resources could be better spent elsewhere.
Mhm. And yeah, so being so focused on acquisitions, I think is a good strategy. How are you building rapport with your sellers? It sounds like that's probably a big part of it is getting them on the phone and talking with them. What's that scene look like for you?
It's different for everybody. Basically, they typically they'll say something, and they'll say something about themselves, and I'll just ask an open ended question. Like, I was on a call with a seller from Arizona yesterday, and he mentioned that he was a stockbroker. I just asked him what he did, and then we had a conversation about his opinion that the government should limit short options. We just talk, I have so many random conversations. I basically just try to let them talk and tell me more about themselves, and I just, like you're doing with me, just ask follow up questions. People
Mhm,
love talking about themselves, so
mhm.
I try to employ that. We work in addition to our stuff on the West Coast, working a lot of different places in the Southeast. I grew up in a really small town in South Georgia. I love to hunt, fish, go on the boat, do stuff outdoors, go hiking. So I think on and also have a southern accent. On that level, I think that there's almost like an instant connection with a lot of the people in the places we're marketing to. They hear me on the phone. No offense to anybody from any country out there, but if you have a Filipino VA, they're gonna immediately be skeptical of that person more than they will hearing some dude from South Georgia.
Yeah, that's definitely true. What type of land are you targeting? Are you targeting anything specific, or is it a price range, acreage range?
So typically, we don't like to target anything that has a sale price of below around $30,000. I mean, we're saying that's our median sale price on the back end.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, well, I'll say that plus we really don't like to target stuff that's less than 2 or 3 acres. So in a lot of my mailers, I'll just remove a lot of the stuff that's 3 acres and below.
Yeah. I think that where I see a lot of successful people is in that exact spot that you're talking about is a minimum purchase or resale price of about 30 grand. So you're getting 15,000 on the kind of a minimum target to shoot for. And then there seems to be a sweet spot up to about $150,000 of where you can flip at a pretty good profit and pretty readily. Have you found that, or where do you see the cap of where those flips happen real very naturally, or you get into value add stuff?
So I think you're right around the $150,000. You can it's rare, but you can still hit a double on 125, $150,000 deal. I'll tell you, like all of our six-figure profit deals, they've had some sort of hair on them that we've had to solve. But yeah, I really love these bigger deals, even if you're not buying them at the normal land flipping 60% of value range. Let's say you're buying a 100-acre property for $2,500 an acre, and you reasonably believe that you can sell it for, you know, $3,500 an acre before you pay your brokers and all that stuff. Man, that's almost a six-figure deal, right?
Yeah.
So who's going to turn that down? You got to make sure that you have the financing in place to where you're not going to get crushed by some crazy hard money numbers. But I like that deal more than I like a taking a 25K property and selling it for 70 because I'm still making double. And in times of recession and in times of recession, those large acreage tracks, like, man, they really don't go down in value that much. Like, you really
Mhm.
see your stuff more associated with housing. Your smaller acreage tracts, that's what takes a huge hit. But the stuff in rural areas that's really large land acreage, I love those deals. And if you get bank financing on them at a good rate that doesn't have a bunch of origination, you can use that leverage to turn those into incredible deals. We've done deals where we bought a property for $600,000. It was 296 acres. That's like right at 2K an acre. We sold it at 28.50 an acre. And we had what? We had, let's see, we put $12,000 down. We only put $12,000 down in that deal because the bank allowed us to use our equity in the deal based on their appraised value rather than the purchase price. Yeah, like our spread was going from 600,000 to just over 800,000, but when it was all said and done, like it was a six-figure deal that we turned 12,000 into six figures. And you just have to offer more on those because you're typically dealing with the more sophisticated buyer. And you can still get them in a deal, but you just have to make sure your spread's there. And my rule of thumb is that if we can buy something at $1,000 an acre less than what we're, you know, than what we think we can sell it for conservatively, then that's going to be a good deal.
And you talked a little bit about financing there. You hinted at it. Can you talk a little bit about more about the process with bank financing, who you're approaching, how you're thinking about what terms you're looking for?
Yeah, you just need to go to your local community banks and just develop a relationship there. That's the biggest thing. And their rates are going to be market rates. They're institutional, so that's just going to be the cheapest money that you can get. But it's also going to be a personal guarantee. And then you're going to have your finances in order, and you need to be able to show the income that you need to be able to show income that they can underwrite you on because those guys they're focused on debt to income. Do you have the income to service the debt that they're about to give you? And typically, they won't care at all if you're in and out of the property because those banks they make most of their money on writing mortgages, not holding mortgages. They'll go sell those in the aftermarket. So if they can write the note and get their origination and all that stuff, they're typically happy to. But you just have to develop a relationship with a banker that you know and trust.
Mhm. And do your brother have W-2 income to show the bank, or are they looking at your businesses and able to use that income?
So when we first started, we had W-2 income. We both went full time in the land business in 2022. So we no longer have that, but we have income from the business that we can show. And for some deals, we have had for some way larger deals, we had some other people basically sign on to the loan as co-guarantors, and you make a sweet deal for them too. But yeah, there's if you get creative, there's tons of ways to qualify for these loans. There really is.
And with the PG, are you able to put up your other vacant land as collateral, or are they requiring your primary resident, like your house or something like that? Like how much of a risk are you taking when you're PGing?
You're not giving them a security deed on the house or anything like that. You're just personally liable is all that it means. So like saying if you default, then so if you default and they foreclose on the property, and there's a foreclosure sale. If it's if at the foreclosure sale they get less money than the money that you owe to them, then you're personally liable for that money. If you feel really good about what you're gonna what you're gonna be able to sell it for, I really don't. There's always risk, and you never know what can happen. So I don't want to disillusion anybody and saying, but yeah, there's no risk. But man, with what we're doing, I think it's so much less risky than all these commercial plays because we're running the oldest play in the book. We're buying low and we're selling. I wouldn't say high, but higher.
Yeah, selling up closer to market at least, huh? Talk about a little bit about your law degree and how that fits in with what you're doing, what unique angles that might give you.
Yes, my law degree. So I went to the University of Georgia. I had a great experience there, great professors, just a fantastic education. Then I went to work at a really awesome law firm in Savannah, probably 30 attorney law firm, and had great mentor, great boss there. And we tackled a lot of really tough issues, and it was our job to go out and dig deep, figure out the hard stuff for our clients. That could be in bet the company litigation. That could be, real estate contested quiet title action. I did all sorts of different stuff when I was there, and there was a lot of stuff where it's okay. I know nothing about even this whole industry that this you know where these players in this lawsuit what they're in, but I need to go learn that so that I can figure out what their problem is, what the answer to it is. So I think on a broad spectrum, it makes me not afraid to tackle tough issues. If there's an access problem, we need to go negotiate an easement. If there's so you name the issue, I can go do the research and find out and say, here's our options. Let's go figure it out. And I think you don't need a law degree to be super successful in land. Like you just don't. But I think it is a little bit of cheat code when it comes to figuring out the hard stuff. And then I'm just really familiar with the entitlement process and stuff like that too.
What's the maybe stickiest situation you've been able to get yourself out of because you had some unique angles as a lawyer or with your background or something where you had to dig in real deep like that, figure something out?
We had we had this property. It was in I wouldn't call it sticky, but it just kept on getting better and better because of the research that we did, and we just were able to figure everything out with it. So we bought it out of an estate. It was like 65 acres. But when we first started looking at it, we were like, man, this thing looks like it doesn't even have physical access, and it might not have legal access. The original plats weren't really clear. So I was like, I'm just going to go read every deed associated with this thing. And we figured out not only does this thing have legal access, it has legal access to a major river in Georgia, which, and it's about it. The only thing that separates it and the river is a 10-acre property. So it went from like this being just a property on a dirt road without power to now this is an excellent property with it's essentially a riverfront property that you can go and you can legitimately launch your boat into this river and go up and down. And then we had a when we dug into the deed records, we also found that we didn't just have a sliver of road frontage. We had a pretty fair amount of road frontage because there was an additional property that came with it. But the deed research that we did on the front end made us just realize like how good of a price that we were getting this property and what a home run that it would be. And we bought that one for just over 170, and we sold it for 422,000.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great story. Love it. That's the devil's really in the details when you start getting and digging into these deals like that.
Yeah, we're working through one. We're working through one now. I can't say too much, but we're buying a 300 plus acre property, and we've already closed in escrow. So basically, the attorney's holding it while we figure out this issue dealing with a railroad bed that crosses the property. And there's a neighboring landowner that way back in the 1800s they owned this railroad, and back in 2003 they put into the county records an affidavit of ownership asserting that they own the railroad bed that crosses their property and then onto ours. And it is a key part of the internal access and road system of the property. So basically, we can't close until we clear this cloud on the property. So now we're negotiating with this very large landowner to try to get them to release their claim on it. You know, and it's likely a spurious claim, but we're just trying to resolve it amicably in an economical way. But I think my experience as an attorney and looking at problems like this, saying, yes, this may be our right, but let's be pragmatic about this and figure this out in an economic way. I think that helps there just with the attitude to take towards problems like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So is that something, do you talk directly with the other party there and just say, "Hey, let's make a deal," or are you going back and forth through lawyers, or how do you approach that in a way that you're how do you try to massage that situation?
So for this one, it's a family corporation that they have, and then they've always had an attorney. So we are having our closing attorney, amazing real estate attorney. He's the guy that's handling the communication with their family attorney on this one.
Mhm,
For other, we have another deal going on where I'm directly negotiating an easement. It's a landlocked property. I'm directly negotiating an easement through a different large landowner. He has the plantation in a conservation easement, like one of the tax purposes conservation easement, so you can get all these tax savings on. So we are getting an easement through his land. For that, I'm directly talking to him. For the railroad deal, it's just a little bit different of a situation, and they're requesting that we pay them something. So we're handling that through our attorney so that we don't get double crossed there.
yeah. And so when you're negotiating these deals personally, like an easement, aside from, "Hey, I'll just give you this much money," what other levers can you pull, or which ways can you incentivize to be creative about working those types of deals?
The big thing that I'd tell people is look, I don't want to change the character of your land. All I want to do is get to my property, and I'm not going to cause a problem for you. I'm willing to put it in the easement language that I can use this existing road, and that's it. I don't want to bulldoze anything. I don't want to do anything there. I just want to get to my property. And that person, of course, they're a property owner because you want to get over theirs. They typically get that. Like the landlocked deal I was telling you about, like that guy, he's not even asking for anything. We skip traced him. I called him up. He had some information about him on the internet, and I just asked him about that sort of asked him about some of the things that I'd read, and we established a rapport. And then he probably asked me 20 times, 20 different ways that he's not going to be deeding me any piece of his land. And I had to assure him of that. No, we just need the easement for ingress, egress over it. And he's
Mm,
like, okay, get me the language. I'll get it to my attorney. Then we'll be good. So it's just like negotiating a land deal. You just have to establish that rapport and trust and to do what you say that you're going to do.
mhm. How often is it that you have someone who's just a real stickler as far as, "I'm not giving anyone access for anything"? Are people on on par generally pretty reasonable when it comes to that, or do you find, yeah, how often do you find someone who's real tough on that type of thing?
To be honest, I've never. I know that those people are out there, but I have yet to run across them. And
Mhm,
also, just like dealing with anybody, like if you're just really nice and you're not entitled, you don't like. You just never need to be like, I'm entitled to this. Then usually you'll be able to work something out. Most states have an an access law to where if you are actually landlocked, you are able to sue for access if they deny you an easement. So I never like to bring that up, but that's always in the back of my mind. Like, there's a legal path to me getting access to my property if I don't already have it. The bad thing about that, at least here in Georgia, is that yes, you are entitled to access your property, but you're not entitled to bring utilities down it. You're
mhm.
entitled to access it. If you really want to have a value add play, you want to be able to have somewhere to get utilities, etc. So the best way to figure that out is just to be friendly with the neighbor. And if you need to pay them something, then you pay them. And if they're nice enough to just give it to you, that's great too.
Yeah. Do you operate mainly in a specific area? Do you stick to specific counties or specific state so that you know the laws really well, or do you venture out North Carolina, Florida, like around the states? Like, how do you think about that?
I know the law better in our home state in Georgia better than I do anywhere else. That said, We still we've done deals all over the Southeast from Alabama to Virginia. We've done deals in Montana, Washington State, Oregon, Arizona, California. So we're not scared to go anywhere. We can still, no matter where it is, we can identify problems. We can find the people to help us work them out.
How has that evolved over time? I'm sure you probably started out more wide and broad and started to narrow down on a strategy for picking counties specifically. How do you think about that?
So I'd say when we first started out, basically I was scanning Zillow to see where there was a great deal of activity for properties trading between 20 and 50,000. Okay, there's a lot of activity here. Let's target here. One thing that I've learned is gone on is that just because you don't see a lot of activity in an area doesn't mean that there's not huge demand for land in that area. So, say we go off the beaten path probably more than most people that we know. And I know this sounds strange, but I'm almost we've almost gotten to the point where we're targeting land where we would like to own land, just places that have a lot of upland, that don't have huge problems with wetlands. Yes, it's really subjective. I don't have a ton of objective criteria. Go back to the leverage point. You can do this anywhere. There's people that are going to want to sell you their land in almost any county if you hit the right price. You just send the mail. There'll be some sort of deal that comes out of it typically.
And when you go off the beaten path like that, have you run into any situations where you have problems with dispo and getting rid of the property since maybe you're taking a risk there as far as it's not as high of an activity place, or or what you're saying is that dispo hasn't been a problem. You just find a good deal and it's a beautiful piece of property. It's easy to sell almost anywhere. Like,
Yeah, it's the latter. It's like even in a place that doesn't have a ton of sales in the past 6 months or a year, that doesn't necessarily matter. That place, they might not have had much listed. People might just hold on to their land more there than they do, say, in Arizona. And throughout the Southeast, people they think about land ownership differently than they do out in Arizona. But Arizona, they're like, okay, I'm going to buy this 40-acre property that looks like almost all the other 40-acre properties out there, and I'm going to be able to pull my RV camper. But there's honestly like limited uses what you can do for it here. But 40 acres in the Southeast is totally different. Like you can do so much with it, and people hang on to it more, and it may even mean more to people here than it does there.
do you think it sounds like there's a different mindset. And so do you think people are buying it for more long-term hold for their family or for rural recreational or to build a dream house? What's the thought behind why people are treating land that way in the Southeast, do you think?
I think there's far more utility value, and they're buying it for the that utility value, just meaning the primarily the recreation and the ability to build and create their home there. If you have a wooded 40 acres, you can have just like my grandfather's land I was talking about. You can have a pond, a deer plot, multiple stands. You can have a huge garden, and a lot of places out west, that's not necessarily the case. And I think
Mhm.
that the more stuff that you can do with it, the more perceived utility, the more people are going to want to just hold on to it. And there's also just something about I don't know what it is here, but people just love having their own spot. They love having this is my land. That it's my domain. I can do whatever I want with it.
Yeah. When I think about some of the difference between, let's say, Texas, which is really popular, people buying 40 acres out there all the time, versus the Southeast, it almost feels like your 40 acres might feel like 200 acres if you have mountains and rivers and trees and it's tucked away, versus you could be in Texas with 40 acres and you might see your neighbor. And so I feel like there's some sort of psychological difference there, at least for me, if I'm thinking about somewhere that I would want to be out hunting and fishing and maybe building a house, like that thought is more appealing to me personally. So what's maybe the most off the beaten path property that you've ever come across, or like most the property that was most intriguing to you, or like maybe I want to own that type of thing? What's that?
Oh, we had a so last year we had a property come across our radar that like it's probably an hour and 45 minutes away from where we live. It's only 25 minutes south of our farm where we have a cabin, great hunting setup and all that stuff over there. This property had two deep wells. It had has a luxury deer stand that has power to it. So you can bring up a fan, or like in the when it's still hot in September, you can bring up a heater once it gets colder. It's insulated, has an actual running a toilet with running water in like an outhouse, probably 50 feet from the deer stand, which is just hilarious to me. There's no door or anything. It's just like a toilet like under a little shack, but it has legit running water. It has like two different fields. One of them has an awesome irrigation system that the owner had set up, and then it's got an old house on it from probably like the 1920s that we need to board up. We're buying some farm. We're still in the process of talking with the old owner about buying some farm equipment and stuff that they've had on it. But we went out there and we were like, yeah, we don't want to sell this one. We're keeping this one because it's an amazing deer hunting setup. It's set up to make some sort of mini farm. My brother has a background in agriculture, so we're like, let's figure out something that we can do or grow out here. So that's just a little dream mini project that we have going there. And then this year we're planning on plowing it, planting sunflowers, and having a dove shoot out there. And because it's so close to us, like it's got some real utility, and it's just a super cool little property. So we got that one. We're like, we're getting it at a great price. We put bank financing on it, and that's great. I made the payments like $10,000 a year, and we got it at 95,000. Got it at 95,000. It appraised at 165. So we're like, we're buying equity. Like this is going to be a great deal for us as a buy and hold. Like there's great growth going on in the area. So this is going to go up in value, but there's also great utility value for us right now. So let's just hang on to this thing. And it's just another cool property that we can go to down there. We can go, it's legitimately possible for us to wake up at the cabin, ride down there and go deer hunting.
That's wonderful. That's and there's whitetail out there. And are you allowed to? I think that you can probably bait them in. You can have a field of oats or something like that, and to bring them in. Is that right?
Yeah, you can have a deer plot. Yeah, so you
Mhm.
can plant stone peas, all sorts of different. There's basically deer plot mixes that you can go out there and plant. But yeah, it's got a awesome clearing right from the deer stand. So the old owners, they probably hadn't maintained it for 3 or 4 years. So we're putting some money into cleaning it up. We had to do a little dirt work to get a new culvert in to connect the two pieces of the property. That was probably $7,000, but it's a super cool place. So we were like, we're not letting this one go.
Yeah, that's great. I got my first bow hunting buck 2 years ago, and I just like fell in
Nice.
love with bow hunting. Yeah, I just like so that's one of my hobbies. So I'm always interested to hear about the stuff in the south of whitetail. Or we've got blacktail out here, and they're just taller, or excuse me, smaller, a little bit more feral and tiny, and running around the mountains. So I love the whitetail. They just yeah,
Give me a call. Come out here to Savannah. Our spot's probably an hour and 20 from the airport.
love it. Love it. All right. See, that's why it's all about having a podcast. You get all kinds of connections. It's awesome. That's great. I like how you think about land and the whole I'm the whole land scene in the southeast has really been growing on me over time because of a lot of the reasons you said. So let's think about maybe what's a controversial opinion that you have in regards to land and land flipping. It doesn't necessarily have to be like controversy, like people are going to get mad on the internet, but maybe something that you have a contrarian take, or something different you think about land that a lot of people don't, or in land flipping or
I think
value add or any?
it just goes back to something I said earlier about, man, like, we're running advertising companies. Like, this is an ad agency. We are a direct marketing advertising agency. Everybody's always talking about, I did this deal, that deal, and there's some self promotion that myself included. But when you strip it down, we are advertising agencies. So we need to be operating as such. Like, I think not enough people put enough time and effort into effective copy in what they're mailing out. We've put a lot of time and energy into creating great marketing to go out to people. And we're in the process of getting all of our numbers together, but I feel like we get probably a much higher than average return on our ad spend. And I think a lot of that does have to do with the way that we focused on our ad copy and getting people to call us back.
Do you have any tips that, without giving away your exact copy, do you have any tips or anything interesting you do with your copy that people might be intrigued by?
I'd say to make it as personable as possible. Everybody's sending out the same mailer saying, "Quick offer for your land. I'm a trusted company that's done 600 deals." Or I got one the other day that was like, "I represent an investment firm." No,
Yeah.
you need to be you. Like, you're this one guy that's looking for land in this one place. That has so much more appeal to most of these landowners than, like, I'm XYZ Land Corp LLC. Like, do you work for BlackRock? Is what
Mhm.
some people may think about that. And I don't have any. I believe in what we're doing, and we always do what we say we're going to do. And I have no problem putting my own name on the mailer that goes out.
Yeah, you referred to yourself as a service business among some other things, but when you think of yourself as a service business, how do you present that to sellers? Like, what are you offering them?
You are offering them cash for their land in X amount of days. A lot of people, they might not have sold land before. You're saying, like, I'm going to guide you through the process. We put we're offering to put earnest money down. Yeah, the service you're providing is convenience. So we just try to convey that in our copy of, this is going to be really convenient for you. This is going to be a really easy way to sell your property. And for many people, that's what they're looking for. So we just try to be very personable in our written copy, and we convey that this is going to be an easy process for you, and that we'll handle everything and we'll pay all the closing costs.
Yeah, I've had a few friends ask me, like, why are people why do people sell you their land at a fraction of the price? And I think the easiest way for me to explain it to layman is the same reason that someone trades a car in. You know that you could go on Craigslist and you could wash the car and you could do all these things and sell it for more money, or you can just take it to the dealer and, they'll give you money for it, and they'll hold your hand through it. It's just convenience.
Yeah, a lot of it's apathy. Like, you have apathetic sellers, and
Mhm.
there's typically not a lot of distress, and that's one of the things I really love about the land space. Because in house wholesaling, and I've never done house wholesaling, but I've read and about a bunch of stuff to deal with it, and watched a bunch of the videos, all that stuff. Like, there's typically a lot more distress, and people are in, like, really bad financial situations that you're having to help them get out of in some way with house wholesaling. Um, and we really don't see that hardly ever. It really is, the motivation really is just more like, "Hey, I'm apathetic. This offer showed up. Um, it works for me. So tell me where you want to go from here." And yeah, it's just, you hate seeing when somebody's in a bad spot. So I'd rather just help somebody get where they want to go rather than maybe profit off of their bad situation.
Yeah, I'd never put that together, but by definition, owning an extra piece of land is almost a sign that you have some sort of excess. So it's going to be less often that you're running into these distressed sellers, more often that you're running into someone's, yeah, I used to hunt it, don't do that anymore. Or my daughter's getting married in 3 months and just want to get rid of it, don't care. And that is a real positive part of dealing in land. Um, do you think that people care who's buying the land? You notice that you mentioned that you put your own name behind it and that type of thing. Do you think that people are thinking about legacy when they sell land very often, or is it more apathy, or what do you run across in that?
I think it's different for different people. Some people, it's just all about the price. Other
Mm.
people, they do care that you're not that you're not representing China. I've had
Mhm.
multiple people ask me, "You're not buying land for China," or the two always get is China or the teachers union.
Oh, really? I haven't heard of the teachers union. That's interesting.
I had multiple people be like, "You're not buying land for China or the teachers union, are you?" No, sir. This is
Uh-huh.
just me and my brother. And
Interesting.
I think that some people do. And I think there's also something to be said for playing in your own backyard. I've had multiple deals where, here in Georgia, where they're like, yeah, I got this other offer from this guy in Texas or these other people from this other place, but I called you back because you're from here. I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's great. That's a little bit of an edge, that you can get there. And that person, to your question, like, I think they care who they're selling to.
Mhm.
They want to sell to somebody more local than somebody in a far off state.
I can see a little bit of that feeling like that it's staying almost within the family type of feel as opposed to just some investors buying it. They're going to flip it. It turns into a very transactional type thing. And we've talked a lot about the emotions surrounding land here. And so I can see that definitely playing into it a lot. Um, what do you think? You've mentioned that you think about it as a marketing or ad agency. Where would you point people to dive deeper into that concept? What are some of your favorite books or podcasts or things surrounding advertising, marketing, and building that type of brand around your land business?
So I'm going to give you a list here.
I love
Um,
it. I love lists.
Confessions of an Advertising Man by David Ogilvy, Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins, My Life in Advertising by Claude Hopkins. I just got two more books on advertising that I'm about to dig into. One's the King of Madison Avenue, which is about David Ogilvy. He ran this ad agency called Ogilvy and Mathers. Warren Buffett always talks about David Ogilvy. Said David Ogilvy is a genius. There's
Hmm.
a hilarious line in one of David Ogilvy's books where it's like, uh, it, "I'm the guy who, when I saw that the New York Times had published, 'Is David Ogilvy a Genius?' I called my lawyer and told them to sue them for the question mark." There's another one that I'm about to dig into. It is The Art of Writing Advertising. And it's another thing with David Ogilvy in it. And then I've gotten some good stuff from another, it's almost like a textbook, but successful direct marketing methods by Stone and Jacobs. So I'm like, I don't know, I'm doing a deep dive on advertising because look, human nature doesn't change. Like there's so much that people in advertising have figured out beforehand, and like we're ignorant amateurs if we don't go try to learn that. There's no excuse. Like there's no excuse for sending out bad copy. If we're serious about what we're doing, we need to send out the best stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I might add the ad. What's it called? The ad week, the copywriting handbook. I think it's Sugarman. But anyway, I'm into that whole thought process as well. I love the idea of good copywriting. So it sounds like you're really into advertising, marketing, copywriting. Is that your Is that kind of one of your main passions around things you're studying? Or are there other veins to your study surrounding land that you're interested in too?
There's just, I mean, I love reading biographies. I love that podcast Founders, just people in business, the history of entrepreneurship and what you can learn from people that have come before. It's broad reaching. Like I love history. I love reading about history. There's just so much that you can learn there. I love writing. My career as an attorney, I was in a really writing heavy area of the law. And I spent a great deal of time and energy improving my writing because I viewed my job there as to well, it was I was a professional writer. People don't think about attorneys like that very often, but when you boil it down, what if you're a litigator, what are you? You are a professional writer. 98% of the result that you're going to get for your client in a court is going to come from your written work and the research that you've done. So I really enjoyed that part of the job. And that's also one reason I got into Twitter was to have a writing outlet.
That's a heck of a concept there. I was thinking of all of this marketing and copy and things like that directly around land, but the idea that a lawyer is a professional writer is that's a really profound thought. That's great. So did you come to the love of writing and having concise thoughts through becoming a lawyer, or did you start to discover that when you started to transition into land?
Even in high school, I loved one of my favorite classes in high school was my creative writing class.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just I liked it then. And in college, I majored in political science and I almost got a double major in Spanish. Not quite, but I love language. I love writing. I just do. I always have.
Mhm.
And I think that if you can communicate well and tell your story, it can just put you on such an awesome trajectory. There's really something to be said for being able to tell your story in a way that allows you to connect with just infinitely more people than you could if you were just going it by yourself and meeting people at conferences or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah. You can see I've got each of these pictures up here has a mental model basically that I use behind there. But this is PT Barnum here. And he wrote, There's a customer born every minute, or that was written maybe about his life. But from a marketing perspective, he's one of my favorite people to reference or think about. Like, how might he approach this? Because he was always such a showman. He always had such an interesting angle. So, what people in history do you look to or think about when you consider writing or maybe promoting yourself or looking at Twitter and how that's a vehicle for business? And yeah, what are some historical figures you think about there?
So let me go back to your PT Barnum comment there. There's a guy that you need to know about and a book that you need to read. Jesse Cole, who is the founder of the Savannah Bananas. And they're basically like the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball now. Like they started off as a college wood bat league, and now they're filling up professional baseball stadiums all around the country. They have their own form of baseball they play. This dude, he, uh, he walks around the stadium in a yellow tuxedo. He takes pages right out of Walt Disney, P.T. Barnum's book when it comes to just a fan experience and the way that he uses his business to create his marketing. The book is called Find Your Yellow Tux, and it's just about standing out, just like Disney and P.T. Barnum did. Going back to your question about there's some people in history that I think about, you know, telling your story. Yeah, I'm in no way saying I'm like the people that I'm about to reference, but it's just an example. You have people like Alexander the Great, Caesar, and Napoleon, all of whom used the concept of telling their story to great effect to help them achieve the ends that they wanted. Alexander, he named every city that he created Alexandria. There was a ridiculous number of Alexandrias, and he put statues of himself all over the place to make himself, more like a god all over his empire. Caesar, when he's gaining notoriety as a general, he's writing his account of his conquest in Gaul. And that became a very popular book at that time and really increased his notoriety and his ability to attract military men to his army. Napoleon was obsessive about his propaganda and the way that he used that to fuel his military machine. And we're not generals in this business, but the concept still applies. Like, if you tell your story, it can help you achieve your end no matter what it is, especially if you have an interesting story and you can communicate that effectively in a way that interests people.
Yeah, it's when you start talking about that, it's so easy to start drawing the parallels between Alexander having statues of himself and cities named after himself. He's essentially staying top of mind with people, which on a very small level in Twitter, it's like you're just posting daily and you're just pinging in people's brains. You're part of their the mental construct that they have. Just the land lawyer. That's a guy I've heard of on Twitter. I see him post every once in a while, and it starts to become part of your consciousness. And that's a really cool way to look at it. And yeah, as you grow your account, I look forward to seeing what the land lawyer becomes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's you stay top of mind there, and then they have a a tough deal they need to get through. Maybe I can help with that. Maybe they want to partner up, or maybe they have some sort of issue that deals like, hey, I want to get this thing rezoned. It's way more valuable if we go get it rezoned to industrial. Okay, I was the assistant city attorney for two towns for almost 4 years. I'm super familiar with that process. Let's talk about it and see what we can make happen. I think it's just it's another way to drive deal flow and find new partners and just network with people. It's such a hack to be able to have access to some of the people that you have access on there.
With you putting yourself out there as the land lawyer, it resonates for people like, oh, if I have this tough deal, I might ping the land lawyer and ask him. Are you continuing a legal business? Is this part of your strategy is to have land and your legal business going, or what's that part look like?
No, I'm not offering legal services. I'm licensed to practice here in Georgia, and I keep up my license. When I left the law firm, basically we worked out an independent contractor relationship for me to like basically help smooth out the transition. They had something that they asked me to help with. If it's my old boss, I may do it out of just respect for him, but I'm not actively maintaining a legal practice. My time's better focused building our land business. Not saying that there won't be some opportunity for legal work in the future, but as of right now, no.
Yeah. So this is a connection and helping people with business deals and making like bigger picture business connections. Are you thinking of further down the road? How are you picturing your land business as you maybe you expand on Twitter and you have a lot of connections? Are you looking to go in a different direction or grow into land further? Are you happy where you're at? Or what's the 5 year plan look like for you?
5-year plan. So the land flipping business and figuring out some of these title issues, minor subdivides. That is just that's something that really can be systematized. So it's really profitable too. So our 5-year plan is let's create just a machine that can run through these, do these more clean deals this way. But where we want to go is we want to be entitling these larger tracts that we can potentially exit to, say, the national home builders, that sort of thing. So we want to get more into entitlements. We want to have a steady, just cash multiplier over, let's say, the left side, where that is we are doing our marketing, we are fielding inbound leads, we are flipping land and doing deals here. But then the more complicated stuff, it's higher leverage. Like we need to be going out and doing more of that stuff ourselves. And then hopefully the business will grow to a point where we can hire additional people to help on that entitlement and development side of the business as well. I think that's where you can make a 7-figure lick. That's where you can really go out and start to build really a lot of wealth in a few deals.
Where is the best place for people to find you online and follow your journey?
On Twitter, and my handle is at landlawyer Brian with an I.
All right. And what if you could put, so say you had a million followers on Twitter and you could put one message out there that everyone should know about land, what would that be?
Man, if it looks like work, roll up your sleeves. Like that's where the money is. Like
Hmm.
I think people pass over these hard deals all day, but that is where you'll make your money all day. I don't know that we've had a six-figure profit deal that didn't have some sort of tough issue that we had to work through. And don't pass those up. Just roll up your sleeves and get to work and figure it out.
Good call. Good call. That is a perfect spot to wrap up our awesome talk with the land lawyer here. I'd love to have you back on and a
Yeah,
few
anytime.
months from now and see where you're at. So, any parting thoughts for the listeners?
I think we covered a lot, man. Thank you for your time, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was a blast. We'll have you back on, and great to have you. And give a follow at the land lawyer on Twitter, my friends.